Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. How many tags do you need for your project, for your Java project? How many JUnit tags do you need? Let us answer that question right away. The correct answer, or at least in my world, is 2. And that's because you do not want a setup that is too complex, but you still want some of your tests not to be run on your CI/CD pipeline. That could be that some of your tests might actually check your environments. Maybe you have a lot of environments, and when someone asks you, is this environment up and running, then you could, instead of going and checking a lot of dashboards, then you can just run your unit test, and then your unit tests that actually targets these environments will actually tell you whether this environment is up and running. And you don't want these tests to be run on your CI/CD pipeline because they have dependencies to something that might be up or down. You don't know. You also, if you have some integrations tests that requires something outside in the world to be running, you don't want those to be part of your CI/CD either, and that is why I say that you need two tags. One to tag per default you want all of your tests to be run. So the default should be that if you don't add a tag on top, then you just want this test to be run always. And you should aim for actually creating tests that always are being run. That means that, let's say that you have a database dependency, then you can still create some cool stops. This is actually something that I target in some of my videos on how to write testable code. You can stop your database repositories in Spring, and then you can actually return whatever is needed for your test to run, because you want to test your own logic. Most of the times you don't want. Sometimes you want to test your query if it's an advanced query. Then you want to test your query, and you only want to test that query while you actually develop it. Usually you actually want to test the logic around your query. That is what is important. And then of course you would stop your database, or you can also create test data. That's another possibility. And then use a memory database like H2 to run up locally when you run your test. But try to aim for very few tags, because it will confuse your colleagues, and then suddenly you'll stop using these tags at all. So if you don't have any better reason for having more tags than this, to keep your number of tags to 2. You have one default, and then you have a special tags for your CI/CD tests. I have invented this tag right here. It do not run per default. So this is actually a tag that it does not exist yet because I've not used it yet, but I will use it in this video along with you. So what this actually does is that I'm actually creating profiles. If you don't know what a Maven profile is, then it's different setups that you can have with Maven. And if you're using IntelliJ, then it's very easy to enable or disable a profile. You always need one profile to be active per default, or at least I would definitely recommend that you do that, because then you know that this profile is your default profile. This is the one that your CI/CD system, your pipeline, will run before it builds your application, or as a part of building your application. But before deployment at least. So in this situation right here, I have a default profile. And then I have another profile which is named Run All Tests. And the way that I have set up my tests is with the Surefire plugin. If you don't know, if you haven't tried the Maven Surefire plugin yet, then read up about it. It has a lot of features inside it. It has a lot of features in it, and you can have a configuration area right here. That is the cool part, and you will see many examples where you include groups for your Surefire plugin test. Instead of doing that, then I would actually say exclude groups instead, and then say which test you don't want to run, right? So and here I have this variable right here. This is you can see I used $, and then the curly brackets, and then do not run, and then that variable is set up here in my profile section. So per default it will be do not run per default, and then if I say run all tests, then I'll just set it to something that does not exist, right? Remember, it's an exclusion, so in this case this tag does not exist. Those are the tests that will not run in this situation, right? But let us try to create some tests that has this tag right here. So first of all, what is the condition of this project right here? It is a project that is used for my test suite video about test suites, how to set those up. So go check that out if you haven't done that already. But let us just try to run a test. You can actually see a screen, and we have 5 tests, and it took 10 seconds to run these tests right here. I could tweak these tests by not spinning up the Spring Boot context if I don't need it. Then I could skip the web. Then I could skip the web context. But this video is not about optimization. I will make another video about that maybe. Yeah. So we have 5 running tests right now. So now we will actually say that we will have this. We will create another crew service test. So this could, you know what? We're going to create a whole new test. So let us create a whole new test. We will create this test. What should it do? It should be like power all space station service test. So this is of course it's just it's just an imaginary test, of course, and it does not do anything. I'll remove this crew service right here, but you should imagine that this test right here, it actually has some kind of third-party dependency. So this test right here, we do not want to run that as part of our CI/CD pipeline. And of course now my clipboard was overwritten, so I have to go back and fetch once again. And you can actually see here I'm already using tags. That was a part of the test suite video. I'm using tags, and I can use multiple tags by tagging like this. Now I've tagged this do not run per default, so this means that this should not be run per default. Power up all stations. Like this, and then what should it do? We always need an assertion, or else it's not a test, right? So we can say assert equals 1 long, and then we can say 1 L like this. So it is still green, and now we can run this test that we have right here, where we power up all of our space stations. We know that this has a third-party dependency to maybe to some solar cells somewhere. And those solar cells are not always available, so it's okay that we run it now. Now we can actually see that the solar cells are available right now, so that's fine. We can see that our logic is working. We are happy, but we don't want it to be a part of the pipeline. So let us see if it actually works. So I will make sure that I'm using the profiles right here. Just a good tip and trick. If you're playing around with profiles and you are adding variables like this, we are adding properties right here. Remember to press these 2 arrows right here, because else you will not see it if you actually create something new. So maybe we have another var like this, and then we can say blah 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 blah. So if I want to use that somewhere, let us go down to our Surefire plugin again. So let's say that I actually want to use it here. Then I do not get code completion. Oh, I actually get that now, another one. Okay, so I actually got code completion there now. But if you don't get the code completion, press the refresh button. Maybe it's just because I did not have the profiles to begin with. That's why I did not get the code completion. But now we have it, I can see that. Okay, so now we have the default profile enabled. We will run our tests. Double click this lifecycle target right here. Yes, so how many tests did run? 5 tests ran. Okay, now let us go down to and if you search for that one with the power, there's no test named power. So let us go to, so now let us go to the run all tests instead. So now I've enabled this profile instead. You can also, of course, do this with the Maven command line, but it's just easier just to tick with this one off right here. So let's see what happens now. Run all tests, and 6 tests are run. And let us search for power just for fun. you can see that now Power All Stage Base Station test has been run also. You do not need more than 2 tags in my opinion. I've heard a lot of then other developers say, but don't you want a test? You want some tag that says this is a slow test or this is a fast test, and no, you want all of your tests to be fast. If you make a very slow test, then you should try to see that maybe you have misunderstood something. Usually when you create slow tests, it's usually because you're setting up too many things to begin with. Maybe you have at the before steps that inserts 2,000 or 10,000 records into a database, and then you do that per test, and of course then your tests, running all of your tests will actually be slow then if you have to do that setup every time. So you want your test to be fast, and one way to do that is actually to mock off your data layer, and you don't have to, so that means that of course then your queries are not being tested, so you could create specific tests for that and then tag them with do not run per default. So every time we have something that is slow, mark it with do not run per default, and then create stops and mocks for whatever makes it slow. So it's fast instead, right? So you want to test your own code. You don't need to test that someone else's code. You don't need to test that you can insert something into a database, or that Spring Data actually works. You don't want to test that every time you run your own test, right? You want to test that your own logic is still sound, and that you did not break anything when you change those and refactor those 4 classes. Then you wanted to make sure and test that you did not break anything, and yet that your tests are still green. So make sure that you're testing the right things. The most common mistake is actually to test someone else's library or framework, or to test something that is not your own logic. And another common mistake is also to not to write testable code. So if your methods return something every time, if you create a methods that return something, and if you create smaller classes, and if you create many methods, for each action that actually makes sense, make them return something, then you can test on whatever they're returning, and then you can create small unit tests that actually tests each part of this logic. This means that when you're running tests and if you get a red flag somewhere, if you get a fail, then it will be very easy for you to know where it is, and you can just double click that test, and then you'll end up on that method. And if your method is very small, of course, then there are a few lines where the error could actually be in, right? Yes, so this was it for tonight actually, and this project right here, it will be on my GitHub account, so just go check that one out. And thank you very much for all of your questions in the comment section, and thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again soon. Have a great evening. Bye bye.